The recent 2024 and beyond producer letter announced a content pause for Conan Exiles as the developers focus in on bug fixes and stability. After over a year of messy release upon messy release, it seems to be what the community wanted, but will the content pause actually work? Today I want to talk about it and see what the future may look like. Firstly, if this is the first you're hearing of it, big new content for Conan Exiles is paused for the foreseeable future while the team focus on reducing bugs and technical debt. I covered this in a full video the day after it was released. I would recommend watching that video first if you're unaware of exactly what this means. I wanted to make this video now as opposed to include it then, as I think it's important to let opinions percolate a bit. The gut reaction is valuable, but I wanted to put some real thought into what this could actually mean for the game. At the moment, the situation for Conan Exiles is dire. It's Funcom's most successful title to date, and it has a passionate and loyal fanbase. Conan the Barbarian is still pretty recognisable culturally and has a lot of potential. However, Conan Exiles as a game has continually ran into problems, especially over the last year or so, where the game has just been full of bugs with every update. The producer letter was certainly correct in that the community had turned from asking for new content to instead asking for bug fixes. That's an experience that I, and I'm sure many other content creators, can attest to just from our own comments. Furthermore, some people had specifically began to ask for a sort of age of bug fixes or age of health, where the team takes some time away from content to work on fixing issues. I wouldn't say it was the majority view, but the way the game was going, it would have been not too long until that was the prevailing opinion. I ran a poll as to how people felt about the content pause, and with almost 900 votes, I think it's fair to say that cautiously optimistic won by a large margin. This letter was, as far as I'm aware, the first time Funcom have acknowledged the issues to this scale. They've always said they were working on bugs, but when they just kept piling on, that just ended up as white noise. Had the letter just been, "we commit to fixing problems," most probably would have wrote it off as nothing different. However, the team have seemingly made a tangible step towards fixing the problems. That being said, one step must be followed by another, and then some more. They've said the right words, but it's pretty much just words until they follow it up with action, which will come in the spring update. To be frank, there's a lot of doubt in the community about this, and understandably so. There's always a small minority who would scream about how bad the game was, even if it was perfect, but for most of us, we've suffered through over a year of problem upon problem, so it's going to take some actual results before people believe what they're reading. There are some who think this is a move towards maintenance mode, or the eventual sunsetting of Conan Exiles, and some who presume this is cover for the team moving over to June Awakening. I gotta be honest, I don't really buy any of those. Maintenance mode itself is a period in which a game receives no more updates of any sorts and is generally considered complete and bug-free. Obviously not the case now, but I also don't think that will be the case in the future. I'll touch on why in a moment. As for moving the team to June, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Firstly, we already know the June team is probably significantly bigger than the Conan team, and secondly, Funcom confirmed at Gamescom that June would drop into early access in early 2025, so launch is sometime around the corner. I would imagine, from a layman's perspective, that the team is already set and they have the people they need. June will likely be successful, but I don't think that means Conan's getting dumped and the dev team moved. The reason for both of those previous points is, of course, money. If we look at Conan's player base on Steam, the 24-hour peak at the time of recording is 10,000. We don't have any numbers for consoles, but the most sensible approach is probably just to extrapolate this player number for PlayStation and Xbox. It might be higher, console players don't tend to jump around games as much in my experience, but we'll call it 10k for Xbox and 10k for PlayStation. There's also Epic Games, not exactly the most popular platform. I don't think they have a player number tracker like Steam has either, so we'll just lowball it at 2k, could be higher, but we'll play it safe. In total, 32k max players per day. Not huge, but also not a small number either. Not only does it show there's an interest in playing the game of course, but some portion will translate directly to money. On the topic of June and player numbers, having seen a bit more of June gameplay and the design ideas through June Directs, I think Conan and June can actually coexist. Initially, I was a bit worried that Funcom were double dipping into the same market, but from what we've seen, I think the games will end up holding quite different audiences, both on tone and gameplay, at least from what we've seen thus far. Ultimately though, if the devs think they can still make money on Conan, the project will continue. From my point of view, I think Conan still has money making potential and may have even more if they can bring lapsed players back with bug fixes. Each major update brings a spike in players back to the game, but a lot of them are likely driven away by the continual issues. The player base has the potential to grow through people that already own the game and new players, but nobody wants to lose thralls or fall through their base, and also nobody wants to buy stuff from a store when they can't be sure if things will even work. I think that's the core reason why I don't think we're seeing a move towards maintenance or the team being shifted to June. Conan can likely still make money, and for a business, that is probably all that matters. In terms of actually getting the content pause to work though, that's a different kettle of fish. For starters, I think the devs need to identify what the community actually wants from this period, and I think they probably have a decent idea. We don't want system overhauls, we don't want things fixed that aren't broken, and we don't want to wait months for an update just to get a couple of small fixes like cloth clipping through your leg when you sit on a chair. No, we want the big issues handled. Falling through foundations, the inventory overhaul, thralls disappearing, not being able to load old save games, all the issues that people have complained about over and over that tangibly harm gameplay for the average player and have actively driven people away from the game. To be frank, nobody cares about small, inconsequential issues like graphical bugs. It's the big hitters that are pushing people away from playing, and they're the issues that need the most attention. Importantly, communication will be vital for the tenure of the pause, more so than usual. My personal vision for a time like this is quite simple. Document everything, communicate everything, there's no big content to spoil, so you may as well be an open book and allow the community to see your processes for fixing the problems they suffer through. If someone can look at a regularly updated document that marks out the progress on bug fixes, the severity and importance they're given and so on, it does a lot more than just saying we're working on stuff. I'll be honest, I'm not super convinced we'll see a huge jump in communication. I hope I'll be proved wrong, but funcom have just never been the best communicators out there. If that spring update comes and it just wipes out a ton of problems, people will be able to move past the lack of comms, but even the bare minimum of a list of bugs and priorities should, in my opinion, be done. Additionally, I imagine this period will entail some things being done internally that don't look like a lot to us, but are probably quite important. An example from recent memory would be living settlements. It functionally didn't look like a lot, but it was doubtless a big and complex undertaking behind the scenes that was planned to make subsequent content easier to create. If the devs spend time fixing core systems internally, or do something to reduce the prevalence of bugs sneaking their way into future updates, boring as it might be, they should talk about it. It might be stuff that will go over a lot of people's heads, but it's more about the assurances that the time spent doing things we don't actually see are actually worth doing, and what effect they will have. Another thing that I think should be priority is also improving the experience on official servers. The devs have said before the majority of players choose to play on private servers, but that doesn't mean the minority on officials is a tiny amount, especially over on consoles. It's pretty well known that official servers have some fairly rough times handling players, buildings and so on. Even in my homeless PvE challenge run on a low ping, fairly low population server that wasn't massively built up, there were still some very hefty lag spikes that just came out of nowhere, so I dread to think of the experience on a server that's been built up and has a high player count. I'll be honest, I don't know if this is a Conan problem, a G-Portal problem, or a bit of both, but the content pause is about bugs and stability, and if you want stability, official servers are a big pain point for many players. So to wrap it up, ultimately, to succeed, Conan's content pause will need three things: a targeted focus on the issues that matter the most, clear communication about all of the issues and their status, including explanations of steps taken to internally strengthen integrity of updates, and to focus on stability as much as you focus on bug fixes. Funcom have paid a lot of lip service towards fixing bugs in the past, but clearly the amount of new issues has become untenable, and the admittance of that alongside the step of pausing new content is a step beyond what we'd usually expect. If it were the usual platitudes, I wouldn't expect much to change, but given that they've put a pause on new content, I think it's at least worth having some hope that things can be fixed. The past year and a bit have just been plagued by constant problems, so I understand the doubt or even outright refusal that this could work, but it is certainly an indication of a step forward. Now the action actually needs to follow. To be honest, I'm not expecting perfection, but I do think Funcom will at least get rid of some of the big issues that have been really agitating the community. Hopefully we're all surprised by loads of fixes, but if it turns out to be little more than smoke and mirrors, well, I'll have to eat some humble pie. All that being said, I think the content pause can be a success. Conan has a loyal player base that enjoys the game. The game and property itself still have life in it, and the money making potential is there, I think, but that upcoming spring update will set the tone. Hopefully funcom hits the ground running, and of course I'll be here to cover it, and plenty of other Conan news, builds, reviews, lore, and much more in the meantime. As always, do let me know your thoughts in the comments below. A lot of the community feels quite jaded after the past year or so, justifiably, but I think there could be light at the end of the tunnel if funcom play their cards right and give us what we're asking for, a more stable and smoother experience. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to see videos early and support the channel directly, consider joining us over on Patreon, link in the description and pinned comment. Take care, and I'll see you soon.